President Putin speaks about Kiev's peace formula. Russian President Vladimir Putin declared that Moscow would not yield to ultimatums from Ukraine and Western countries as they attempt to achieve diplomatically what they have not achieved militarily. In mid-June, Switzerland will host an international conference to discuss Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's peace formula. Russia has declared it will not participate in this even. Responding to reporters on May 16, President Putin reiterated Moscow's stance regarding the upcoming conference. They want to gather as many countries as possible, persuade everyone that the best option is the terms from Ukraine's side, then they will send it to us in the form of an ultimatum. Is that a serious negotiating approach? Certainly not, Putin said. He noted that Russia and Ukraine had reached a preliminary agreement on a peace deal back in 2022, with provisions beneficial to both sides. However, after the general terms were negotiated, Kiev backed out and declared it would seek a military victory. Putin declared that their efforts to impose their demands on Moscow would fail, just as efforts to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia would. The Russian leader stated that the agreements reached in Istanbul, Turkey, in 2022 could serve as a basis for a future peace agreement. He mentioned that the concessions for Ukraine in this document were proposed by Kiev, possibly with Western consent. However, any future agreement would also have to take into account the real situation. Following the collapse of the peace talks in 2022, 4 regions of Ukraine held referendums, where they voted in favor of separating from Ukraine and joining Russia. The Ukrainian government declared that they would not accept these results. Ukraine's peace formula demands that Russia return the 4 mentioned regions in the Crimea Peninsula, which voted to join Russia in 2014, along with provisions for war reparations, support for the country's recovery, etc. President Putin of Russia referred to it as a list of demands, rather than a serious basis for negotiations. President Putin stated that Russia has no plans to take control of Kharkiv. Russian President Vladimir Putin stated that Moscow has no intention of seizing control of the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv. Putin made this declaration as Russian forces have been gaining ground in the Kharkiv region in recent days. During his 2-day visit to China, President Putin addressed reporters at the Tan Cable Technology Institute, commenting on Russian military activities in the Kharkiv region and affirming Moscow's success on the battlefield with actions, according to plan. When asked about Russia's objectives in Kharkiv, Putin noted that Ukraine must take responsibility for recent hostilities in the region, as it constantly shells residential areas in border areas, including Belgorod. He reiterated the previously stated warning to Kiev that Russia would have to establish buffer zones in areas controlled by Ukraine if attacks continue. That's what we are doing. Regarding gaining control of Kharkiv, we have no such plans, Putin said. Russian forces launched attacks in the Kharkiv region last week, pushing back Ukrainian forces and gaining control of some border settlements. As a result, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has cancelled all foreign trips in the near future and will travel directly to Kharkiv, Ukraine's second-largest city. In an interview with ABC News on May 16, President Zelensky described the situation as very serious and emphasized that Ukraine cannot afford to lose this city. Kiev had previously announced the deployment of reserve forces to Kharkiv. The Institute for the Study of War, ISW, previously made a similar assessment, stating that Russia intends to establish a buffer zone in Kharkiv rather than advancing further. ISW assesses that Russian forces have achieved tactical successes in the northern areas of Kharkiv since May 10, in areas where Ukrainian forces deliberately did not establish critical defensive lines. It appears that the Russians are now aiming to create a buffer zone, rather than advancing further into Kharkiv.